everyone. So we're going to look at another very interesting segment, which is one of my favorites, to be very honest. Which is, to look at the communication with ourselves, right? So what we saw in section one was really about between. So we think communication is always between two people, right? So now we're going to look in this section the intra-communication, because the amount we talk to ourselves, right, we don't really talk to anyone else. And like I'd said right in the beginning, I'm also training to be a Jungian analyst, and one of the things that we use a lot, right, is dreams, right? Because dreams are messengers coming from our own self, from our own psyche. And before I start, so everything that you see in a dream, this is not just a glimpse of it, is it's not to be taken in the literal. Okay, so I'll give a few examples of this, and hopefully, if you may get a little more interested and consider this aspect. I work with, so I ask athletes, especially those I work with long term, to keep a tab of their dreams. You really get an idea of what's happening in their psyche, right? Because there's only so much we are conscious about, right? There is a large part of it. Remember the iceberg profile that we spoke about in unit 1? A large part of it is also unconscious, or something that needs to be brought to consciousness, right? So I'm going to begin with this dream, which is one of my favorite dreams. So this is an athlete who's doing very well at the world stage, and in the beginning, at a certain point of time, he was a little laid back, so that would be one of the concerns. The coach would go on, refer a session, and he's like, communication issue. And then, again, now this is a foreign coach, and I'm like, okay, what communication issue, coach? What is happening? So, and he would be like, yeah, ma'am, okay. And, like, it was just a very laid back attitude. And, so we kept working. And then one of those times when I was, this session was scheduled, and he came in and then he said, oh, ma'am, how are you and all that. And I'm like, how are you doing and all. And then he's like, I have a problem. And I said, oh, great. Like, finally, like, something's coming out. And then, so then I said, what happened? And then he said, I'm having this dream, and my light bulb and all, like, all started flashing. And I'm like, so we're getting something out here. And he said, I'm having this repetitive dream, and, and before major tournaments. Okay. And before few of the tournaments he had, actually. So I said, okay, tell me, what is it? So he said, so he's a jumper, and he was like, I'm competing and I'm doing well. And suddenly, out of nowhere, when I'm supposed to be awarded the gold, right? Someone overtakes me and I become second, right? I become the second in charge, or the person who's got the second place. And then I said, okay. And then I said, let's look at it. And this is a guy I've been working for some time, so I kind of knew what was being said. But remember, it's not about how great we are and how much I've understood, right? But it's always about, tweaking, teasing the right questions so that your athlete reflects on, they have an aha moment, right? So so I said, okay. And then I said, let's look into it. So is this a known opponent? He's like, no, I don't know who this opponent is. He's nowhere in the world stage. And then slowly, worked it through. And then I said, okay. And then I said, so could this be an inner figure, right? Do you think, could it be an inner figure? Because that's what dreams are, right? It's not referring to the outer, but it's really referring to a quality you probably need, or the inner XYZ. What are they trying to say? At least this is how we look at it from a Jungian perspective. Okay. And he had this light bulb. Okay. And then we said, okay, so what do you think? And he finally said, oh, I need to push myself, right? It's probably, I have the potential, and that's what's being communicated here. So I said, brilliant. And after that, and this was a dream which was repetitive. So when we say a dream is recurring, right, like you have a similar or same kind of dream coming, your psyche is really trying to get your attention. And the best part was, he was so animated, he was so alive, he was so wanting to know and curious, and he started pushing himself, right? And he started performing, and there's really been no looking back. And this was such a vital cue, you know, which came from his own self, right? For this athlete, right? He embedded what his psyche was trying to say, and look at the results of it, right? So that's the one dream. Then I want to bring in a couple, I mean, a very common dream that we hear not just with athletes but also with others, non sports people, is I'm being chased. So this was one of the swimmers, and she came during at a point where she was extremely low, a lot of issues, interpersonal issues, coaching issues, and so she came in, basically she was referred for anxiousness, okay, very stressed and anxious. And I remember asking, okay, do you have dreams? And she's like, oh my god, don't even ask, I'm always being chased by an animal. And so and in the beginning you can't really say, you kind of go, okay, you first need to calm them down a little. As the sessions progressed, I said, what do you think, what do you really think is happening? What's your dream probably trying to say, right? What are you trying to run from? What am I not facing? And of course, it's we, as we were working through her issues, and empowering her, because she was very disempowered and lost. As that started happening, slowly I said, when you're ready, whenever you're ready, okay, there's no force, slowly pause, stay, and turn around and really see what was that animal trying to say, right? Because, and what was that animal in itself, right? Because she was running away, and what she needed was to face that challenge. And maybe, and most of the time, that then shifts into an inner supportive figure, right? Till then it was almost like a terror dream, right? And the last example I want to give for dreams, right, is this golfer, very just young golfer, around just in her 20s. And the COVID time, I actually want to bring this to notice. The COVID time, from say 2020 to late 21, right, and entering 2022, we saw, at least I saw a lot of athletes having breakdown, because we didn't know what's going to happen, when it's going to happen. People didn't know what to do, and also those, especially were just so focused on sport, had not built a life. They're probably training alone, living alone. For them, it actually got even worse. And this was a golfer who was referred, like the parent connected. And I remember, she was so relieved that she had someone to actually speak to, right? And we started, and she was a psychology student herself. Sorry, she is a psychology student herself. So and I started saying, I'm like, can you start keeping tab of your dreams, please? And the recurring theme would be, she's at a party, for example, one of the dreams, she's at a party, it's her birthday, she's cutting the cake and everything, and then suddenly everyone vanishes. And before going, everyone's so sad, and she's lonely. Then she was a lot into animals, and then suddenly the animal she's caring for vanishes, or dies in her arm. So this is the dream. What was her psyche trying to say? This is a disconnect from everything, right? In some of the discussions also we've had, that you need to have a connection, right? When you're disconnected from everything, it's really difficult to flow through, right? So with her, in particular, what we had to do was start building some connections and some associations, and that really was the need of the hour with this particular athlete. So I hope this section on dreams gave you all an idea, to keep tab, right? Write it down, if not you're going to forget it, because if you don't, you're losing a very, very important connection to yourself, right? I then want to bring in, again, intra-communication with one of the cricketer, and he gave this really, really beautiful write up. And I'm going to read this for you all, because I feel what he said is so potent, right? um, and he's used every possible word and sense over there. So I'm going to read this, and I want you to pay attention to what happens to you as I read it, right? My greatest triumphs and my most catastrophic failures have been a direct result of the state of my mind. Being in a positive emotional state simply helps one feel physically lighter, stay more present in the moment, and make better decisions. I remember a summer when I was undergoing significant emotional turmoil. I was extremely vulnerable and miserable. One day, when the speed gun was brought to measure our bowling speeds, I tensed up and overthought my way to the ridiculous conclusion that this day would somehow make or break my career. I made myself so physically stiff and unstable that I bowled only at 97 kilometers per hour. The nerves made a pit in my stomach, my legs felt heavy, and I simply couldn't manage to get myself into my normal bowling rhythm. I obsessed about this failure for the next 2 3 days and made a mess of my match. I felt like my career and my life was slipping away. I asked for a session and discussed this with Dr. Sridhar. I remember the first words when I said maybe I should quit were, "Come on, you're so much stronger than this." Then she went on to remind me of how I had worked my way to every sporting achievement. In an instant, from that perspective, the fact that I had a few bad weeks felt minuscule in comparison to what I had already managed to get through. When she held out a mirror, I actually found my most insurmountable problems to be quite surmountable. This was where she had a significant impact on me. She made me to be mindful and ask myself, is this relevant now? Whenever I had a limiting thought. A couple of days after the session, I had a practice game and had to put in a good performance. I was still slightly nervous but managed to stay calm enough. I ended up with 4 wickets for 17 runs in 6 overs. It changed everything in an instant. I went from being very quiet, avoiding eye contact, and broody to being more vocal, happy, and more confident. Suddenly, I felt lighter and in sync with my body, the best rhythm of my life. I bowled extremely quickly and accurate and gave the batsmen a hard time. When my bowling speed was checked, it was 130 kilometers per hour. There isn't a coach or a fitness trainer in the world who can have you raise your pace from 97 to 130 kilometers per hour in about a week. Even the greatest bowlers with hundreds of wickets wouldn't be able to do it. Yet somehow your mind can. Just going to give you a second to pause to take in this wonderful piece that he's written, right? And what was actually being, so what really happened here, right? What was being communicated? So this was, a young cricketer who was got into a mess, and then that's what happens, right? He got into a catastrophe space. And what did I have to do, or what did any psychologist at that point of time do, was hold the mirror to what he had achieved till then, and also bring back this, it's also called the monkey mind. Bring back this monkey mind to the present, to it's not the end of the world, but you can't just do cognitive, right? And this was a person who would talk a lot, right? Like, as in, he would go, I almost call it gibberish because it's like you're so, okay, this is happening, yes. So we hear, we hold, and we need to shift, right? I can't allow an athlete to talk, let's say, our sessions for like from 45 to 55 or an hour. There's no point if he goes on talking for 55 minutes and I just hear and I've not shifted him, right? He might feel good, yes, that he's vented, but then the point is, what has he been focusing on? So what did I need to build over here was his communication, which was, I always call this like, a person with a danda, right? You are being a very tyrannical policeman here, right? You're being extremely judgmental about yourself, and what you need, okay, again coming back to a little bit of Jungian work, is an inner figure who's more supportive, right? So this is where we shift from, yeah, so what I would have done is shift him to, yeah, okay, this happened, tell me, a day when you had a decent practice, right? And then slowly go to, what brings you to your best state, right? So you have to slowly shift, and once the athlete has calmed down, then you kind of go, now let's relook at it. Okay, what do we do now, right? That becomes very, very essential. And then of course, like if you look at his, the and this is totally what he's actually written, so I didn't change because I really thought this was a great piece to bring out, because he talks about how your stomach gets so weak, your legs get so heavy, you just aren't in that rhythm, right? So again, the body is giving you cues, and then you can also use the body to come back, right? And also, most importantly, you have to change perspective, you cannot go in that. So this is where, if someone's there to support, brilliant, but most of the time when it's happening, let's say something happens, and an athlete goes off into negative frame of mind, they're alone at that point in time, right? So we have to empower them to know how to communicate with themselves, right? That's very, very paramount. So I come to another favorite section of mine, and like I'd said right in the beginning, I also work with elephants. I work with elephant welfare and rehab, and if you look at this image, right, we talk of body because we're with sports, right? Um, but how often is the body really used? Like a best performance in flow state, it's embodied. It's not like the mind and head are separate. But it's not the same when an athlete is in stress. And especially when they don't recognize the mind has gone off, right? So if you look at this, right, like, so this was, I was visiting, and of course, I've known these elephants a little. And if you look at it, like, I was trying to befriend the elephant who I was, who with whom I'm looking at, right? And she's someone who takes time, so like that's why you'll notice, like, I'm obviously not standing close, her caretaker is right there, and I'm trying to look at her, I'm trying to talk, of course, I'd given something to eat in the interim, like, some fruit to build a connection, and also going, okay, what's your comfort, you don't want me to come close, that's fine. But it was very interesting because in the picture also, what's beautiful is if you see the other elephant right on the right hand side, is she's extremely friendly, and I'm trying to talk to this other elephant, and look at the elephant one, I'll call her elephant one, her trunk is coming out, right, like she's like, and that's how they reach out, so she's like, talk to me. So when I saw this, I'm like, this is such a beautiful picture, right? And I think that's what it is, like what I'm trying to explain is, it's really about picking up the body language, right? It's really about picking up the cues, and especially when we talk about communication, does this person want you to come close, want you to talk or not? And I think this is something animals in particular teach us, kids actually teach us. I've of course put up this because I thought it was a brilliant example to explain, and also since I am involved with them. So now we will be seeing this little video by Dr. Sridhar, who's a wildlife biologist, on like how elephants communicate. There's so many modes in which they communicate, right?
Elephants, as we all know, are complex social animals and display a wide array of communication. Today, I'm here to talk about some aspects of communication in Asian elephants and the various modes in which they communicate with each other. The different types of communication, I mean, they use all kinds of senses: their hearing, their smell, the vision, and tactile. There are studies on African elephants that even show that elephants communicate through seismic frequencies, that they're able to detect vibrations. The most commonly observed, for instance, are the acoustic communication or tactile communication, where people can see elephants producing different kinds of sounds. And each of these sounds are different in different contexts, and they mean various things. And there's, for instance, in African elephants, there's a comprehensive call library which talks about different kinds of calls and different, I mean, what each call mean, and in what context uh, uh, those calls communicate, what features of their behavior, and so on. Coming back to the aspect of tactile communication, each of when elephants touch each other, there's different kinds of signaling that happens. There's a wide repertoire of tactile signals that elephants use to communicate within each other. Say, for instance, elephants putting trunk in each other's mouth means reassurance, or elephant entwining trunk with another means social, in different kinds of social interactions in different contexts. It might be sparring, it might be greeting. Elephant putting trunk over another one's body, for instance, means completely something completely different. And there's a lot of communication that happens through tactile signals, for instance. There are also other visual signals, like, for instance, there are different postures. Must, for example, must is a phenomenon in male Asian and African elephants, which is characterized by heightened concentrations of the testosterone hormone, and is associated with reproductive behavior in the male elephants. And in must, for instance, there's a characteristic must walk where the elephant's walking with a raised head, signaling dominance to other individuals. And simultaneously, in the reproductive behavior of females also display the estrus walk when they are when they are cycling. So there are a lot of these visual signals as well. And even without any tactile communication, there could be signaling between individuals when a dominant bull is approaching. For instance, the submissive bull tends to retreat. Different calls mean different things in different contexts.
And share this case vignette of this young elephant. I call her the little one. I'm always teased for calling her the little one. She's over 6 feet tall, but she took to me like anything. So this is our first interaction. I want you to take a look at the picture, right? And of course, it's the whole elephant is not really shown, so that just to maintain the identity of elephants, just like we maintain the identity of players. Um, right? What do you feel like? Of course, she's reached out her trunk. Like that's the way they reach out to you when they connect to you. That's the way they communicate with each other as well. And I'm holding a trunk. I want you to hold this, and I'm just going to take you through how we connected, right? So the day one, and just that part of it. So this is an elephant who's been in captivity, unfortunately, for from young. And I went in. I remember, I went in and I said, "Oh, is this your name?" Right? Like, I'm gonna call her Ellie, okay? And she gave out a rumble, and low rumble, and then started vocalizing, which is something you see only in captive elephants. So they try to mimic you, right? And then the most interesting thing was I'd gone with a friend of mine, which she was not at all interested in my friend. And I was trying to talk to her caretaker as well, and she kept vocalizing louder so that it's just me, so that she wanted, what was she trying to communicate? Talk to me. Now this is tall even for an elephant, 6 feet tall. In the prime of her age, she's very young. I'm meeting her for the first time, so you don't be foolhardy and just go and say, okay, just because I work with elephants, you go close. But she kept talking, she's vocalizing, she kept giving me her trunk. um, and then slowly I took to her trunk, okay, and slowly, and then at one point I told her, I said, oh, it's strange, but I'd hurt my metatarsal of my right leg and I just recovered. So I was also being very mindful that even just a little push, just very friendly, even if with the trunk I can get hurt. But I sat down. There was this little space, and I sat down her tank on top of her tank, and I said, "Oh, I've got hurt here." So it's like the metatarsal is where you put the you accelerate, right, like in a car. And she started bringing her trunk to that exact space. So she'd come like this, and then it would just get so gentle, right? So she understood something there, right? And she did this through our whole time together. And so long story short, and then of course finally she was rescued and all that. But it was a bit of a challenge. But she was so stressed when I saw her in that space. But the minute I said Ellie, right, her name, again she responded. right? So what did we establish? And of course, in that interim between the first and her rescue, I had seen her, but only about, let's say, 5 6 times, because she stayed it was she was in an institution at the outskirts of Bangalore. But it's you build. So with especially animal work, it's your prosody, it's your tone. And also, I think what she picked up was, oh, this is not just someone who wants to feed me, this is not just someone who wants a photo. Again, communication, right? And look at the tactile. Like now, it's like she wants me to hold her, like be close to her. She gets a little, of course, jealous. It's like if I don't spend time with her. So communication is so vital, right? Whether you're communicating to a human being, a player, an elephant, a dog, what they're seeing is, so if I had gone with, hey, maybe if my pitch was long, or like if I just bombarded and went close, right, which we see a lot of people do, then what happens? They're going to get defensive, because elephants in itself have a huge personal space. So what are we doing? First thing is respect for anyone, for anyone. And also see, is this person in that same, or is this being in that same space and wants to communicate? And I even with those of us who work with elephants, it's like people are like, don't believe this is your first time with her, because she really took. But I think she really took, because I mean, that's what I've said. It's like, what did she sense? What did this being sense? Oh, I probably work with elephants, but I think more than that, this person wants to relate to me. This person wants, or this being wants to connect to me. I feel safe with the way she's talking, she's approaching, the way, we built it, right? And I think I really wanted to bring this in, because the section we're looking at is communication, right? So it's so much about even verbal, your tone, my posture, my facial expression, and that prosody. Am I feeling, am I making this person safe, happy, connected? Or, am I so loud? Am I not attuning to what's needed in this space? Right? So I thought this was I really wanted to bring this in, and just bring in a different perspective. Um, and I want us, what I want to bring in is, as we've looked at both these sections, is to really go, how do I empower myself? Right? What have you been listening to? What you've been listening to, right? Like, how do I really empower myself? Because if I am not in my power or empowered, what the other person says may trigger me. And if I'm in that place where, let's say, I'm leading a discussion, I'm not going to empower the other, right? So first, it's always about us, because this section is really about me, my communication to myself. And that doesn't mean we beat ourselves up when things don't go well, okay? Because every time it's not really going to be possible to be in that exact state, but to recognize, okay, how's my tone, how's my, like let's say someone's saying something, and I'm like, I have this expression of, I don't even want to listen to you, right? Like sometimes we see this in meetings and stuff which happens, right? And how does it affect you? So going that, okay, it doesn't matter, maybe this person is zoned out, but let me come in, maybe I focus on something else, and I continue, right? And also to really ask myself, what's my impact? What is the impact? Jane Goodall, she's a well-known conservationist. I'm sure a lot of you all would have heard about her. She always says, we're all influencing another. What we need to see is it a positive influence, right? And I think that's a beautiful note to bring this section to a close. I'm going to play this little video for you all, which talks a little of verbal and non-verbal. That's a beautiful note to end this section on, right? I hope you all enjoyed this. Thank you.